Racey's Net, first and third Sunday, 8 p.m., W5FC.
Skynet will be in control of your military.
But you'll be in control of Skynet, right?
Skynet.
Does anyone wish to use the repeater before we begin the 9 p.m. Skynet? This is KF5PDS. My name is Billy, and I'll be your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. Skynet is a weekly net called every Saturday night at 9 p.m. concerning the subject of astronomy. Our purpose is to help amateurs become more familiar with the nighttime and daytime sky, astronomy, and space in general. This net is open to all amateurs interested in this topic, and we encourage your participation, comments, and suggestions for this net. Stations with priority or emergency traffic may enter the net at any time by using the pro sign break break and your call sign. Is there any emergency or priority traffic? This is a directed net. Please do not transmit without direction from net control, that would be me, and stations are reminded to ID at the end of your transmissions. This weekly net operates on 146.880 MHz with a PL tone of 110.9. Check-ins via Echolink are also possible using the W5FC Dash R station ID or Echolink node 37247. Tonight's topics, astronomy charts, pictures, and live audio-video links are available online. Go to www.w5fc.org right now for the complete list. And remember to tell others about this popular net. All amateur operators are welcome. You need not be a member of any amateur radio club to participate. This net is 90 minutes long and is structured in several parts. General announcements, Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events, where and when you can look through a telescope, discussion topic of the evening, what can you see in the sky tonight, a featured constellation or object or topic, recent astronomical discoveries, space exploration and space history, visible satellite passages over the next couple of days, astronomical Q&A, and our 73 round. And time permitting, we'll try to get to all these parts. All amateurs licensed to transmit on this frequency are invited to check in. So at this time, I'll turn the net over to my alternate net control, Tom, KE5ICX, if you'll do the check-in honors, please.
This is KE5ICX. I'm alternate net control for tonight's net. My name's Tom. I'll go ahead and take low power short time check-ins. This is how we do it. Please come with your call sign phonetically, your name, where you're transmitting from. Let me know if you're low power or short time or both. Please come now. Go 5, Tango Mike, Tony, low power portable in Dallas. We'll go ahead and go to regular check-ins, RF only. Please come with your call sign, your name, where you're transmitting from.
This is Inside Bravo Bravo, Bill in Irving, and I have a couple of really short news items.
Number Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony in Dallas.
Kilo Charlie 5, Oscar Zulu Tango, Carolyn in Louisville.
Dallas.
This is Kilo 5, Kilo Tango X-Ray, Kelly, mobile in Rockwall.
Golf 5, Victor Julio Papa, Robert Richardson.
Bravo Zulu Whiskey J, Bull on the hill near White Settlement and Toledo.
November 5, Whiskey Oscar India, William and Allen.
Whiskey 5, Echo Bravo, Bravo, David in Dallas. All right, let me go ahead and get those check-ins, and then we'll take another round. NT5TM, Tony, I did get you low power and portable in Dallas, and then I didn't acknowledge you, so I am now. N5BB, Bill, over in Irving. KC5OZT, Miss Carolyn, Louisville. K5KTX, Miss Kelly, in Rockwell, mobile. KG5, Victor, Juliet, Papa, Robert Richardson. KG5BZWJ, he's mobile somewhere. N5WOI, William, in Allen. W5 Echo Bravo Bravo, David, over in Dallas. Additional RF check-ins, please come out.
05, Alpha November, Papa, Allen in Dallas.
This is Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima, Brenda and DeSoto.
Foxtrot 5, Zulu, Bravo Lima, Bill, Farmers Branch. let me get those three. I've got K5PNP, Alan in Dallas, WB5OZL, Miss Brenda over in DeSoto. Good seeing you today at Frontiers of Flight. KF5ZBL, Mr. Bill in Farmers Branch. Likewise, good seeing you also. Let's see. I'll just take one more. The check-ins are a little light on RF, so maybe there's some other folks out there. If you'd like to join us on RF, please come with your call sign name, where you're transmitting from.
Foxtrot 5. Bravo, Bravo, Quebec, Ray and Euless.
Very good. I've got KF5BBQ, Ray over in Euless, and KGP Mike over in Richardson. All right, we're going to move over to Echolink. If you'd like to join us via Echolink, now is your chance to do so. If you want to go by voice, we'll give you extra time. Please give us your call sign name, where you're transmitting from. If not voice, then just we'll acknowledge you in the chat box. Just let us know you would like to be placed on the list. Echolink only. Please come now.
This is November 5, Yankee, Echo, Oscar, Stephen in San Antonio.
This is Kilo Bravo 5, Romeo, Hotel, Echo, Brian in Fort Worth.
All right, I got a few. I had to get some folks checked in over on the chat box, so a little bit longer on the pauses. N5YEO, Stephen over in San Antonio, welcome back. KB5RHE, Brian in Fort Worth is likewise. K5JDW, John, who's in Norman, Oklahoma, summer retreat. K5JIT, Randy in Louisville. I'll take one more round of check-ins, any mode, anywhere. If you'd like to join us, we will have additional check-ins, but if you'd like to do so now, here's your opportunity. Please come out. Well, Miss Billy, I've got 19 check-ins. Bill, N5BB does have a couple of news items, I believe, so I will turn the net back to you. This is KE5ICX.
Okay, great. Copy that. We've got 19 check-ins, so welcome to everyone. Welcome to Skynet. Okay, so we'll get started with general announcements. Do we have any general announcements for this evening's net? These can be ham, astronomical, space, or general interest to licensed hams. And since Tom acknowledged N5BB relayed that he has something, we'll go ahead and lead off with Bill. So N5BB, Bill, what announcements do you have for us this evening?
Well, I am now a member of the National Space Society and their local North Texas affiliate.
so I'll be keeping you up to date on that. Brenda let me know where they met and everything, and it's in Irving, just like 2 miles from my house. So the National Space Society will next be meeting a week from tomorrow on Sunday, April the 8th. The meeting starts at 3:30 p.m., but you can come earlier to eat at the Spring Creek Barbecue, which is at the southwest corner of Beltline Road and Highway 183 near the south entrance of DFW Airport. It's directly across Highway 183 from Irving Mall. Again, come early to eat at the Spring Creek Barbecue, and the business meeting starts at 3:30. Or actually, the presentation starts at 3:30 p.m., followed by the business meeting right afterward. The last meeting was very interesting. I think I've already made a comment here about it. It involved looking for exoplanets by somebody from University of Dallas at Irving. And speaking of that group, they're also going to be participating in Uri's night at the Pro Moon Museum in downtown Dallas this a week from today. So Uri's night is the celebration of the anniversary of the first human to launch into space, Yuri Gagarin, April the 12th, 1961. And also the launch of STS-1, the first space shuttle mission, is also honored because it was launched 20 years to the day in April 12th, 1981, which is an interesting little news tidbit. So Uri's night will be celebrated at the Pro Museum. I will be there with others from the National Space Society at the Pro Museum from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. This coming Saturday, a week from today, April the 7th, in 5BD. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Bill, and congrats on the new membership with that group. That sounds very interesting. So thank you for keeping us apprised of that activities in that group. So maybe some of us can come down there and join you some evening. And yes, Uri's night is coming up. That's a big night. All right. Does anyone else have any announcements? Again, these can be general interest to hams. So if you have any announcements for this evening's net, please come now with your call sign. NT5TM, Tony, good evening. What announcements do you have for us this evening?
Kansas, calling anyone at all. The Afterglow movie tonight is The Day After, an especially chilling movie about atomic war. It was the most successful TV movie ever made, at least up to about 2004. We're going to be talking about it tonight right here at 10:30. A good fellowship to death by atomic fallout. Well, I'm with you. The Dallas Amateur Radio Club is going to be at the Frontiers of Flight Museum on Lemon Avenue near Love Field tomorrow. We'll be there from 8:30 until well into the afternoon. We would love to have you. This is not a public service event. This is just fun and fellowship and equipment testing. Come on out, make friends, help make recruits for amateur radio, and see some historic aircraft. We would really like your participation. Amateur Radio Club meeting will take place on Tuesday, April 3rd. It's Old Timers Night. Hear from those who are out there before us who've been amateurs for longer than we have. We're going to be at the Dallas Medical Center, northeast corner of Webb Chapel and LBJ. The board meeting is at 6. The general meeting is at 7. Both are open to the public. Parking is free and right there adjacent to the main hospital building. We're on the 3rd floor community room in that main hospital building. In a busy day tomorrow and a great day on Tuesday. Old Timers Night is always fun, and there are more details on all these announcements at W5FC.org. This is NT5TF.
Great, thank you, Tony. Does anybody else have any announcements for this evening's net? So please come now with your call sign. Okay, not hearing any, so I'll go ahead with a few announcements of my own. The AMSAT Radio Amateur Satellite Group has 2 nets available to Dallas residents on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Central Time. You'll need Echolink installed and you registered. You can find the net under Groups and AMSAT. Also, a live audio link is available on their website at www.amsatnet.com, and this net originates in Houston, Texas. The Dallas AMSAT net, Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, is every Wednesday at 9 p.m. on the Arlington repeater, 147.140 megahertz, with a PL tone of 110.9 and a positive offset. The DARC also has several nets on Monday nights. The first Monday of the month is Ham Fixin's net. If you have a recipe, anecdote, question about food, or want to bring a recipe, Ham Fixin's is the place to do it. Second Monday of the month is MCOM 101, Emergency Communications. The third Monday of the month is a second helping of Ham Fixin's net. And the fourth Monday of the month is GeekNet. You have something geeky to share, news of the weird, geeky books, brain teasers, you name it. If it's geeky, we'll talk about it. And if there's a fifth Monday of the month, then there'll be a fifth Monday surprise net. We've done everything from Christmas Thunderdome discussing best and worst Christmas presents of the year to April Fool's Truth or Lies, and lots of Jeopardy has been played, and there was even a create your own story one night. So there's a lot of fun to be had on the fifth Monday surprise net. On Wednesdays, there's Veterans Net on the first and third week, which goes from 7 to 8 p.m. Central Time, and Saturdays is the Night of Nets, with TechNet from 7 to 8 p.m., and of course at 9 p.m., Skynet. And don't forget the ARRL Net, National Traffic System Training Net, is every night at 6:30 p.m. Central Time, and all are welcome to check in on any or all of these nets. And as Tony mentioned, don't forget tonight's Afterglow movie, The Day After. It's an American television film that first aired on November 20th, 1983 on the ABC television network. More than 100 people in nearly 39 million households, including mine, watched the program during its initial broadcast. With a 46 rating and 62% share of the viewing audience during its initial broadcast, it was the 7th highest rated non-sports show up to that time and set a record as the highest rated television film in history, a record it still held as recently as 2009 reporting. Join us for the next Afterglow movie, The Day After, from 1983, tonight at 10:30 p.m. after Skynet. And you can keep up with all the DARC events, nets, and activities by going to the club website, W5FC.org. This is KF5PDS, your net control for this evening's session of the DARC Skynet. All right, next segment is our Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas events, where and when you can look through a telescope. So if there's anyone here that would like to bring information about the Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas, please come now with your call sign. I'm not hearing any, so I'll go ahead with some information. The Texas Astronomical Society meetings are held on the fourth Friday of every month, except December and November. November it gets moved to the third Friday due to Thanksgiving, and there's usually no meeting in December. The meetings are held at the University of Texas at Dallas campus in Richardson. The meetings begin at 7:30 p.m. in the Science Learning Center, building SLC on the campus map. Important, park only in lots H, I, or J, as parking anywhere else in the campus could result in a ticket. And they have updated their parking policy. You can park in green parking without a parking permit. So be sure you park in lots H, I, or J and only park in green parking. And you can go to utdallas.edu for a campus map. And you can also go to Google Maps to see a map of the campus. And sometimes the rooms do change, so do check the website to make sure of the room location. It's not always in Science Learning Center, but most of the time that's kind of the standing room. The meetings include programs presented by members, guest speakers, and a slideshow of the current constellation of the month. And as I mentioned, you can find out more about Texas Astronomical Society of Dallas at www.texasastro.org. And also, you might want to get there a little early, about 7 p.m., because they've been having like new member orientations and beginning astronomy talks before the meeting starts. So you can find out that information on the website at texasastro.org. And tonight is a fifth Saturday, so there's normally not a star party, but you can check out the calendar. Sometimes there are special events. If you look on the calendar, pretty much every other Saturday night there is a star party somewhere. First Saturday is Spring Park in Garland. Second Saturday is Frisco Commons Park in Frisco. Third Saturday is J.W. Williams Park in Cedar Hill. And fourth Sunday is usually at the Shores Park in Rockwall. Okay. Once again, I'll ask if there's anyone on frequency that would like to bring some information about Texas Astronomical Society. If so, please come now with your call sign. Okay, not hearing anyone, so we'll move on to the NCS topic of the evening. And so since tomorrow is Easter Sunday, I figured the appropriate talk would be to talk about how the date of Easter is calculated. It's not as easy as you would think. So to start off with, I'll be pulling information tonight from the U.S. Naval Observatory website, timeanddate.com, and of course Wikipedia. So to start with, from the U.S. Naval Observatory, Easter is an annual festival observed throughout the Christian world. The date for Easter shifts every year within the Christian calendar. The Gregorian calendar used by most Western Christian churches is the standard international calendar for civil use. It also regulates the ceremonial cycle of the Roman Catholic and Protestant churches. The ecclesiastical rules that determine the date of Easter trace back to 325 Christian era at the First Council of Nicaea, convened by the Roman Emperor Constantine. At that time, the Roman world used the Julian calendar that was put in place by Julius Caesar. So just to give you an idea, let's put on our Wayback Machine and go back to the Roman Empire and look at how the calendar was structured back in the days of Julius Caesar. So Roman dates were counted inclusively forward to next of three principal days. The first of the month, which was known as the Calends, a day less than the middle of the month, known as the Ides, and 8 days, 9 if you count inclusively, before this are known as the Nones. And looking at the calendar, they always counted from the Calends toward the Nones, from the Nones toward the Ides, and then from the Ides toward the Calends again. The original calendar consisted of 10 months, beginning in spring with March. Winter was left as an unassigned span of days. And these months ran for 38 nundial cycles, each forming a kind of 8 or 9 day week if you count inclusively, which ended by religious rituals and a public market. And the winter period was then used to create January and February. The legendary early kings Romulus and Numa were traditionally credited with establishing this early fixed calendar, which bears traces of its origin as an observational lunar one. In particular, the Calends, Nones, and Ides seems to have derived from the first sighting of the crescent moon, the first quarter moon, and the full moon, respectively. The system ran well short of the solar year, and it needed constant intercalation, in other words, inserting of days, to keep religious festivals and other activities in their proper seasons. And for superstitious reasons, such intercalation occurred within the month of February, even after it was no longer considered the last month. After the establishment of the Roman Republic, years began to be dated by consulships, and control over intercalation was granted to the pontifices, who eventually abused their power by lengthening years controlled by their political allies and shortening the years in their rivals' terms of office. Having won this war with Pompey, Caesar used his position as Rome's chief pontiff to enact a calendar reform in 46 BC, coincidentally making the year of his third consulship last for 446 days. In order to avoid interfering with Rome's religious ceremonies, the reform added all its days toward the ends of the months and did not adjust any of the nones or the ides, even in months which came to have 31 days. The Julian calendar was supposed to have a single leap day on February 24th every fourth year, but following Caesar's assassination, the priests figured this inclusive counting and mistakenly added the bisextile day every 3 years. In order to bring the calendar back to its proper place, Augustus was obliged to suspend intercalation for a few decades. The revised calendar remained slightly longer than the solar year, and the date of Easter shifted far enough away from the vernal equinox that Pope Gregory XIII ordered its adjustment in the 16th century. So, going back to that gives you an idea of what the Roman calendar was like. So the First Council of Nicaea decided in 325 to keep Easter on the same Sunday throughout the Christian world. To fix incontrovertibly the date for Easter and to make it determinable indefinitely in advance, the council constructed tables to compute the date. These tables were revised during the following few centuries, resulting eventually in the tables constructed in the 6th century by the abbot of Scythia named Dionysius Exiguus. Nonetheless, different means of calculations continued in use throughout the Christian world. In 1582, Christopher Clavius and a council working at the direction of Gregory XIII, who was Pope of the Roman Catholic Church, completed a reconstruction of the Julian calendar, producing new Easter tables. The new calendar was issued in February in the papal bull called Inter Gravissimas. This new calendar is referred to as the Gregorian calendar. The one major difference between Julian and Gregorian calendars is the leap year rule, which I won't go into. But universal adoption of this Gregorian calendar occurred slowly. By the 1700s, though, most of the Western Europe had adopted the Gregorian calendar. The Eastern Christian churches still determined the Easter dates using the older Julian calendar method. The statement that Easter Day is the first Sunday after the full moon that occurs next after the vernal equinox is only an approximate statement of the actual ecclesiastical rules. The full moon involved is not the astronomical full moon, but an ecclesiastical moon determined from tables that keeps more or less in step with the astronomical full moon. The ecclesiastical rules are that the vernal equinox occurs on March 21st, the ecclesiastical full moon is the 14th day of a tabular lunation or new moon, and Easter falls on the first Sunday following the first ecclesiastical full moon that occurs on or after the day of the vernal equinox. So using these rules, Easter can never occur before March 22nd or later than April 25th. The Gregorian dates for the ecclesiastical full moon are determined using the tables in the Inter Gravissimas. The Western Roman Catholic and Protestant Christian churches use the Gregorian tables, while many Eastern Orthodox Christian churches use older tables based on the Julian calendar. Thus, the civil date of Easter depends on which tables, Gregorian or pre-Gregorian, are used. In a Congress held in 1923, the Eastern churches adopted a modified Gregorian calendar and decided to set the date of Easter according to the astronomical full moon at the meridian of Jerusalem. However, a variety of practices remain among the Eastern churches. There are three major differences between the ecclesiastical and the astronomical systems. One is that the times of the ecclesiastical full moon are not necessarily identical to the times of astronomical full moons. The ecclesiastical tables do not account for the full complexity of the lunar motion. The astronomical definition of the vernal equinox is the instance when the sun, as seen from the Earth, has a zero apparent ecliptic longitude. Yes, the sun's ecliptic longitude, not its declination, is used for the astronomical definition. This instant shifts slightly from year to year within the civil calendar. In the ecclesiastical system, the vernal equinox does not shift. It is fixed on March 21st, regardless of the actual position of the sun. And the third difference is that the date of Easter is a specific calendar date. Easter starts when that date starts for your local time zone. The astronomical vernal equinox occurs at the same instance everywhere on the Earth. So inevitably, the date of Easter occasionally differs from a date that depends on the astronomical full moon and astronomical vernal equinox. In some cases, the difference may apply to some parts of the world and not to others, because two different dates separated by midnight are always simultaneously in progress on the Earth. So you can look at tables, of course, to see dates of Easter and other Christian observances. You can look those up. But right now, let's talk about the computation of the date of Easter. And no, there will not be a test at the end of this lecture. I'll let you off easy this time. So the lunar cycles used by the ecclesiastical system, it's actually simple to program, and the U.S. Naval Observatory gives the algorithm. So if you're interested in looking that up, just look for calculation of Easter, U.S. Naval Observatory, and go to the bottom of the page, and it provides the algorithm, which it would be easy to program. And you have to note that the program uses integer calculations, meaning that all variables are integers and all remainders from division are dropped. So, for example, 7 divided by 3 would just be equal to 2 in integer arithmetic. You would just drop the remainder. So, as an example, if you use the year 2010, you would take 2010 is the year, and then to calculate the number of days, you do 2010 minus 19 times 2010 divided by 19, and doing 2010 divided by 19 in integer calculations would just be 105. So if you did 2010 minus 19 times 105, that equals 15. So you count 15 days from the vernal equinox, results in the date of Easter as being April 4th, 2010. So to calculate the date for 2018, I will leave that as an exercise to the listener. And at the bottom of the page, there's some references, and one is a very good reference is E.G. Richards' 2012 Calendar's Explanatory Supplement to the Astronomical Almanac, 3rd edition. And if you click on this article, it's chapter 15 is called Calendars, and there's a good overview in the section. But if you go down, and it also talks about Egyptian calendars and dates and lunisolar calendars, and it's actually an interesting chapter to read. But if you go through this chapter, it gives you on page 599, section 15.4.3, it gives you rules for the ecclesiastical calendar, and then it gives a calculation of the date of Easter Sunday. And so there are several calculations. It uses a lot of modular arithmetic, so it's nothing major. Usually when you're calculating stuff with calendars, because of the repetition, it's easier to calculate with modular arithmetic, where you can just keep track of remainders. but I'll just describe some of the things of the variables that are used. And again, if you go to the U.S. Naval Observatory article, you can click on this link and it'll take you to this textbook chapter. Let me reset and I'll go into a little bit of the information used in the calculation. Okay, so the date of Easter was calculated according to this formula in this listed in the book using 3 parameters. The first of those is what they call the dominical or Sunday letter. This defines the positions in a year of the Sundays. It's obtained by labeling the days of the year consecutively with the 7 letters A to G, and for the next 7 again A to G, and so on. And so the dominical letter is the letter so assigned to the first Sunday in every other, and it changes from year to year. The second is called the golden number, which is the position 1 to 19 of a year in the 19-year Metonic cycle. So the Metonic cycle is just the cycle of full moons, which occurs about every 19 years. The moon repeats the dates of its phases about every 19 years, and this is known as the Metonic cycle. So to calculate the golden number, you just add 1 to the year and then divide that by 19, and then of course use the integer calculation. And if you look at the remainder, you can tell what year of the Metonic cycle you're in. So for 2018, if you add 1, that would be 2019, and you divide 2019 by 19, that gives you 106 with a remainder of 5. So that means that we're in the 5th year of the Metonic cycle. Then the other third number is called the epact of the year, and the epact this measures age and days from 0 to 29 of the ecclesiastical moon on the first day of the year, which is January 1st. So again, the calculations are done in several steps, and all the steps are described in this book by E.G. Richards in the chapter called Calendars, for which there is a link at the bottom of the U.S. Naval Observatory page on the calculation of Easter. So not all Christian churches observe Easter according to the Gregorian calendar. Some churches still observe Easter under the Julian calendar. And so, you know, is there a perfect calendar? You know, in the Gregorian calendar, Easter falls on a Sunday between March 22nd and April 25th from the year 1753 to the year 2400. In the Julian calendar, used by some Eastern or Orthodox churches, Easter falls on a Sunday from March 22nd to April 25th, which in the Gregorian calendar are from April 3rd to May 10th. You know, so there's definitely some differences there. And there have been some proposed Easter date reforms, which this is listed on timeanddate.com. There have been a number of suggested reforms for the Easter date. For example, in 1997, the World Council of Churches proposed a reform of the Easter calculation to replace an equation-based method of calculating Easter with direct astronomical observation. This would have solved the Easter date differences between churches that observe the Gregorian calendar and those that observe the Julian calendar. The reform was proposed to be implemented in 2001, but it has not yet been adopted. Another example of proposed reform occurred in the United Kingdom, where the Easter Act of 1928 was established to allow the Easter date to be fixed as the first Sunday after the second Saturday in April. However, this law was not implemented, although it remains on the United Kingdom statute law database. So there's some information about the calculation of Easter, and I wish everyone a happy one, whether you celebrate or not. If you don't celebrate it, have a tranquil Sunday, and if you do celebrate Easter, happy Easter in advance. So again, you can look on the U.S. Naval Observatory website for the calculation of Easter article, and if you're interested in the technicalities of the algorithm, you can click on the E.G. Richards link to the calendars chapter and calculate to your heart's content. So with that, this is KF5 PDS, your net control for this session of the DARC Skynet. So at this time, I'll turn the net over to my alternate net control, Tom, KE5ICX, and you'll see if we have any additional check-ins, and then give our report on what we can see in the sky over the next couple of weeks.
Very good, and I will do exactly that. This is KE5ICX. I'm going to acknowledge K5KOB. Philip over in Crandall. He has a new call sign. He is over actually on viewing the site, the Facebook site, which is Skynet, DARC Astronomy Net. He usually checks in by voice. He's not doing that this evening, but he wishes to be acknowledged. It's K5KOB. This is KE5ICX. I'm alternate net control this evening. I'll go ahead and take additional check-ins over on RF. If you'd like to join us, please come with your call sign, your name, and where you're transmitting from. I'll go and let me check over on Echolink here real quick. I think everybody is checked in at this point. There's one. I'll go ahead and ask and pause. Anyone on Echolink which wishes to be acknowledged is not checked in yet. I'll give you a little extra time.
Kilo Bravo 90 Golf Hickey. David, KB9SG1.
Thanks. Back to net.
Very good. I do have KB9er SGY. David, somewhere. We got you checked in. Welcome, David. All right, let's see. What do we have in the sky this evening? Well, earthsky.org, we went ahead and updated this from last week. March 31st, it says, that full moon that you'll see in the sky all night carries the name Blue Moon. In fact, it is the second and final blue moon of this year. By popular acclaim, a blue moon is defined as the second of two full moons to occur in one calendar month. January had two full moons, now March does too. In 1 year seem to belie the idea that one of the once in the blue moon indicates something rare. It's true that in recent years, when more than one definition for blue moons seem to happen pretty often, yet it is indeed quite rare to have two blue moons in a single calendar year. It happened in 1999, and it won't happen again until 2037. A calendar year only embraces two blue moons if there are 13 full moons in a calendar year. In addition, February has no full moon at all. That's exactly what happened in 2018. February didn't have a full moon, while January and March both had two full moons. Thus, in 2018, the two full moons on January 31st and March 31st both count as blue moons. February is the only calendar month that can go without a full moon. Prior to 2018, we last had a February with no full moon 19 years ago in 1999. You probably partied like it was. And as you might expect, we also had two full moons in 1999 on January 31st and March 31st. 19 years from now, in the year 2037, February again will have no full moon, and the months of January and March will each feature two full moons. This year, 2018, presented a total eclipse of the January 31st blue moon. 19 years later, in 2037, another total eclipse of the blue moon will be in the works on January 31st, 2037. Is there something special about the period of 19 years with respect to the Earth's moon? Yes. In periods of 19 years, the days of the moon fall on or near the same calendar date because 19 calendar years are nearly commensurate with 235 lunar months. 235 returns to the same phase. For math, everybody, there are 235 full moons, yet only 228 calendar months. What is that? 19 times 12 equals 228 in this 19-year cycle. Therefore, 7 of these 228 calendar months have to harbor an extra full moon. That's 235 minus 228 equals 7 extra full moons. Moreover, if there is a February with no full moon, we can count on the 8th full moon to fall into the lap of another month. Therefore, we have a total of 8 blue moons in the upcoming 19-year metonic cycle. Hey, did we just talk about that? Okay, so this is what we got. October 31st, 2020, October 31st, 2023, May 31st, 2026, December 31st, yep, last day of 2028, September 30th, 2031, July 31st, 2034, almost done, January 31st, 2037, and March 31st, 2037. Right, you're writing this all down, right? I didn't say whether I was going to have a test or not, so be ready. It says 19 years and 38 years after 2037, that's the years 2056 and 2075, won't present a February with no full moon. It will be a near miss both times, with the full moon falling on February 1st in both of these years. For this reason, there will only be one blue moon in 2056. That'll be March 31st. Write this on your calendar. And one blue moon in 2075 on April 30th. All right, more math. Here comes. Finally, 57 years. That's 19 plus 19 plus 19 equals 57 after 2037. The year 2094 will deliver a February with no full moon and a year with 2 blue moons. That would be obviously December 31st, 2094 and April 30th, 2094. Then 19 years after that, mark your calendars, in the year 2113 will feature 2 blue moons, January 31st and May 30th, and in February with no blue moon, no full moon at all. Of course, we must emphasize that all these dates are based on coordinated universal time. That's UTC. It may not necessarily apply to your time zone. Your mileage may vary. For instance, at North American time zones, the year 2075 will actually showcase 2 blue moons, but no full moon in February of 2075. January the 21st century, 2001 to 2100, presents 3 years with no February full moon and 2 blue moons. That's 2018 this year, 2037, and 2094. Phases of the moon, 2001 to 2100 universal time. The bottom line is, enjoy the second blue moon of the year on March 31st, 2018. The second of 2 blue moons in one calendar year won't happen again until March 31st, 2037. Will not even ask for questions or clarifications because I have no idea what I just read. So, let's go to the U.S. Naval Observatory. This is what they had this week. Some of it's already passed. Some of it is yet to come. The moon brightens the overnight hours as she descends the ecliptic and courses through the sparse star fields of spring. Second full moon of March occurs on the 31st at 8:37 Eastern Time. We're going to skip the blue moon stuff. Let's see. The bright moon wipes out the view of many of the springtime stars. You can still enjoy the departing winter stars that surround Orion, but you'll need to do so this early in the evening since the westernmost stars of the Great Winter Circle may set by midnight. There are a few bright stars to enjoy in the spring sky, though. Regulus, the heart of Leo the Lion, our constellation this evening, by the way, is flanked by the moon in the evenings of the 27th and 28th. Luna perches just over 7 degrees above Spica, the brightest star of the sprawling but faint constellation of Virgo. The brightest star in the northern sky, Arcturus, shines brightly in the east as the night passes, climbing to the place of prominence in the early morning hours. By midnight, just look to the north of the zenith to see the 7 second magnitude stars that make up the Big Dipper asterism. Now on to the planets. Venus and Mercury give us a very good show over the past couple of weeks, but this week Venus has lost her planetary companion to the encroaching Sun. In just 2 short weeks, Mercury has gone from the greatest eastern elongation, when it was easily visible to the naked eye, to conjunction with the Sun, when the fleet planet passes between Earth and Old Sol and is invisible. Venus, however, continues to climb higher into the evening sky and becomes more obvious in the west and each passing evening. By the end of the week, she sets just after the end of the evening twilight. Her journey through the sky is a lonely one. She's moving through the constellations, the late autumn sky, and won't encounter any bright objects until she drifts between the Pleiades and the bright star Aldebaran in late April and early May. You should be able to spot planet Jupiter low in the southeastern sky during the late evening hours. He now rises about 11 p.m. and should be high enough to train the telescope toward 5:1 a.m. You will probably want to wait until the pre-dawn hours to view him, though, since he'll be joined by the ruddy Mars and the ringed Saturn. The latter two steal the show this week as Mars passes the most distant Saturn on the morning of April 2nd. At this time, the 2 planets will be just over 1 degree apart. Binoculars that are up well before the Sun just looks below and to the right of Mars. You can see a fuzzy glow of light found in SDA 22, one of the brightest globular clusters in the galaxy. And there you have it. That's everything I can give you from earthsky.org this week, and /tonight, of course, the U.S. Naval Observatory, wonderful source of tons of information. All right, sending it back to our net control. This is KE5ICX. Back to you, Billy.
Great, thank you very much. And it seems like our bits synchronized pretty nicely there, talking about metonic cycles and full moons and blue moons and all kinds of good stuff. So, yeah, the U.S. Naval Observatory has a lot of great information. So thank you very much, Tom. All right, so next up, this is KF5PDS, your net control for Skynet. Next is our featured constellation. And so at this time, I would just like to remind you that you can follow along on the website W5FC.org, where you can see sky maps and notes and usually some beautiful images. So please go there and follow along. And at this time, I will turn the net over to Carolyn, KC50ZT. The net is yours.
Thank you, Billy. And tonight we're going to look at the front half of Leo, the line. It's a zodiac constellation and one of the largest. In fact, it's the 12th largest in size. It usually represents the Enemian line in Greek mythology. And there are actually 2 meteor showers associated with this constellation. The Leonids is usually in November 17th to 18th every year, which everybody usually observes. Then we have a minor shower that not as many know about, but it peaks between January 1st and the 7th. So, and like I said, this is one of the oldest constellations. And a lot of the civilizations called it a line. The Babylonians, and they knew the star Regulus as a star, or as the line's breast, or the king's star. The Greeks associated it with, like I said, the Nemean line that That's a beast killed by Hercules during the first of his 12 labors. The most in the sky, the 6 bright stars that form the shape of a sickle is the easiest way to recognize this constellation. These stars represent the lion's head, and of course the brightest star, Regulus, marks his heart. And that's the part we'll look at tonight. Regulus, that's Alpha, is the brightest star. She's the 22nd brightest star in the sky. It's about magnitude 1.35, and it's sort of close, about 77 light years away. And it's not just one star. It's a 4-star system composed of 2 pairs of stars. The first one, Regulus A, is a spectroscopic binary, a B-type blue-white main sequence star, and a companion that can't be resolved, but it's believed to be a white dwarf. And the primary star of these 2, the Regulus A, is a young star, fast rotator. It rotates in only 15.9 hours compared to our sun's. I think it's 27 days if I remember right. If it was rotating a tiny bit faster, the star's gravity wouldn't be even able to hold the star together. The other 2 stars of this quartet, Regulus B and Regulus C, they share a common proper motion. They're about magnitude 8.14 and 13.5. And they have an orbital period of about 2,000 years. And Regulus is the closest bright star to the ecliptic. And of course, like so many others, it's regularly occulted by the moon, and rarely, actually, by Mercury and Venus. ZT. Then our next star, Gamma Leonis, is a double star. Got giant class K, magnitude 2.28, and a dimmer class G star, magnitude 3.5. And a planet was discovered in the orbit of the primary star in 2009. And this system with a combined magnitude of 1.98 is easy to observe in a small telescope, and it appears as a bright double star with orange, red, and a greenish yellow components. And another star is a variable star observer. It's a favorite. It's R Leonis, a giant, red giant star that varies from magnitude 4.4 to 11.3, with a 312-day period, which makes it very easy to observe with a proper telescope, of course. And these stars eventually expel their outer envelopes, form planetary nebula, and become white dwarfs. Now, when it's brightest, it can actually be seen without binoculars. But when it's dimmest, you need at least a 7-centimeter telescope to see it. Moving on to some deep sky objects. There's cover some in both halves. We're just going to cover some of the front ones first. But in this constellation, we do have some groups of galaxies. The Leo 1 and Leo 2 groups, and the Leo triplet, made up of M65, 66, and NGC 3628, which I think we'll cover next week. But first one we'll look at is M95. Large spiral galaxy, and it's stands face on, offering an ideal view of the spiral structure. The arms form almost a perfect circle before they spread out, creating a mane-like effect. Mane is an M-A-N-E, of which any line would be proud. It also has a blazing golden core, which is beautiful. And it contains a ring about 2,000 light years across where most of the star formation is taking place. And its magnitude 11 and it belongs to a group called the M96 group of galaxies, and which contains 2 more we'll look at, and at least 9 other small, fainter galaxies. And a supernova was observed in this one in 2012, so it's worth watching. Another in this group of galaxies, which also happens to be in the Leo 1 group of galaxies. M96 is the largest galaxy in Leo 1. It's a double-barred spiral with a small inner bulge through the center. It's at magnitude 10 and is the brightest galaxy in what's called the M96 group. And they think for ultraviolet emissions suggest it has a supermassive black hole at the core. And it's worth watching because it had a type 1A supernova discovered in May of 1998. The third galaxy mentioned in this group is M105, a nice elliptical galaxy, magnitude 10.2, and also known to have a supermassive black hole at the center. And we have another elliptical galaxy now. This is also belongs to this group, but it's fainter. It's located in the stars located in the galaxy's central region are very old, population 2 stars, and NGC 3384. It belongs to the Leo 1 group, along with the others that we've mentioned. I should say the picture is from the Hubble. The picture of M105 is from the Hubble telescope. Anyway, an NGC 2903 is our last object. And it's a beautiful barred spiral galaxy in magnitude 9.7, making it easy to observe. And it was discovered in 1784, but it's this first half of Leo already has some beautiful objects to look at, and it leaves us looking forward to next week when we look at the back half of this constellation. And so unless there's any questions, Billy, I'll turn it back to you. KC50ZT.
part of the sky has some beautiful objects and clusters. Does anybody have any questions for Carolyn before we move on to our next segment? If so, please come now with your call sign. Okay, not hearing any, so this is KF5PDS, your net control for DARC Skynet. All right, next up is recent astronomical discoveries. So at this time, I will turn the net over to Brenda, WB5OZL. The net is yours.
Stand by, please. A little technical issue here. The articles in the that Tom posted are not the ones that I sent him. So we got a little disconnect between the images, and those are articles that I already read before, so I don't want to reread them. So I'll read some from last week rather than a month ago. First article is scientists detect radio echoes of a black hole feeding on a star. On November 11, 2014, a global network of telescopes picked up signals from 300 million light years away that were created by a tidal disruption flare, an explosion of electromagnetic energy that occurs when a black hole rips apart a passing star. Since this discovery, astronomers have trained other telescopes on this very rare event to learn more about how black holes devour matter and regulate the growth of galaxies. Scientists from MIT and Johns Hopkins University have now detected radio signals from the event that match very closely with X-ray emissions produced from the same flare 13 days earlier. They believe these radio echoes, which are more than 90% similar to the Earth event's X-ray emissions, are more than a passing coincidence. Instead, they appear to be evidence of a giant jet of highly energetic particles streaming out from the black hole as stellar material is falling in. Dheeraj Pasham, the postdoc in MIT's Kavli Institute for Astrophysics and Space Research, says the highly similar pattern suggests that the power of the jet shooting out of the black hole is somehow controlled by the rate at which the black hole is feeding on the obliterated star. This is telling us the black hole feeding rate is controlling the strength of the jet it produces, Pasham says. A well-fed black hole produces a strong jet, while a malnourished black hole produces a weak jet or no jet at all. This is the first time we've seen a jet that's controlled by a feeding supermassive black hole. Pasham says scientists have suspected that black hole jets are powered by their accretion rate, but they've never been able to observe this relationship from a single event. You can do this only with these special events where the black hole is just sitting there doing nothing. And then suddenly along comes a star, giving it a lot of fuel to power itself, Pasham says. That's the perfect opportunity to study such things from scratch, essentially. Pasham and his collaborator, Van Jelson of Johns Hopkins University, report their results in a paper published this week in the Astrophysical Journal. Based on theoretical models of black hole evolution, combined with observations of distant galaxies, scientists have a general understanding for what transpires during a tidal disruption event. As a star passes close to a black hole, the black hole's gravitational pull generates tidal forces on the star, similar to the way in which the moon stirs up tides on Earth. However, a black hole's gravitational forces are so immense that they can disrupt the star, stretching and flattening it like a pancake and eventually shredding the star to pieces. In the aftermath, a shower of stellar debris rains down and gets caught up in an accretion disk, a swirl of cosmic material that eventually funnels into and feeds the black hole. This entire process generates colossal bursts of energy across the electromagnetic spectrum. Scientists have observed these bursts in the optical, ultraviolet, and X-ray bands, and also occasionally in the radio end of the spectrum. The source of the X-ray emissions is thought to be ultra-hot material in the innermost regions of the accretion disk, which is just about to fall into a black hole. Optical and ultraviolet emissions likely arise from material further out in the disk, which eventually will be pulled into the black hole. However, what gives rise to radio emissions during a tidal disruption flare has been up for debate. That the radio waves are coming from really energetic electrons that are moving in a magnetic field. That is a well-established process, Pasham says. The debate has been, where are these really energetic electrons coming from? Some scientists propose that in the moments after the stellar explosion, a shock wave propagates outward and energizes the plasma particles in the surrounding medium in a process that in turn emits radio waves. In such a scenario, the pattern of emitted radio waves would look radically different from the pattern of X-rays produced from infalling stellar debris. What we found basically challenges the paradigm, Pasham says. And Van Zelsen looked through data recorded from a tidal disruption flare discovered in 2014 by the Global Telescope Network. It's called the All-Sky Automated Survey for Supernovae. Soon after the initial discovery, multiple electromagnetic telescopes focused on the event, which astronomers coined ASA SSN -14LI. Pasham and Van Zelsen perused radio data from 3 telescopes of the event over 180 days. The researchers looked through the compiled radio data and discovered a clear resemblance to patterns that had previously observed in X-ray data with the same event. When they fit the radio data over the X-ray data, they shifted the two around to compare their similarities. And they found the data sets were most similar, with a 90% resemblance when shifted by 13 days. That is, the same fluctuations in the X-ray spectrum appeared 13 days later in the radio band. The only way that coupling can happen is if there is a physical process that is somehow connecting the X-ray producing accretion flow with the radio producing region, Pasham says. From the same data, Pasham and Van Zelsen calculated the size of the X-ray emitting region to be about 25 times the size of the Sun, while the radio emitting region was about 400,000 times the solar radius. It's not a coincidence that this is happening, Pasham says. Clearly, there's a causal connection between the small region producing X-rays and this big region producing radio waves. The article keeps going on, and it's getting a little late. So I'm going to stop there. I can read the other article if we're out of other stuff, but I don't want to step on somebody else's report. So I'm going to turn it back to Net. This is WB5OZL.
Okay, great. Thanks, Brenda. In case folks don't know, we haven't talked about satellite passages yet, but Tiangong-1, it's on its way down, and people are very interested in the tracking. So just wanted to mention that. You can look on articles. Heavens Above has actual live ground track of Tiangong-1. So they're saying it's supposed to come down either tomorrow or April 2nd. So if anybody has any information about the Tiangong-1 reentry, I'll let you, anybody who has information, if you want to come with your call sign to bring that info, because K5KTX was asking on the chat window if anybody knows if Tiangong-1 is reentered or not. And as far as I know, no, it hasn't, that it's slated to come down sometime tomorrow or maybe early on April 2nd. But if anybody has more specific info and wants to bring it to the net now, I'd appreciate it. Please come with your call sign. Okay, not hearing anything, and KE5ICX, I saw your message in the chat window saying you hadn't heard anything either. So as far as I know, it's supposed to come down either sometime tomorrow afternoon or maybe early Saturday or early April 2nd, early Monday morning. So at this time, I'll go ahead and turn the net over to Kelly, K5KTX, if you'll give us your report on space exploration and space history.
This is K5KTX, and I just got off of a plane about 2 hours ago, so I'm dragging just a little bit. I did have an interesting week in Orlando, which started off with a trip to the Kennedy Space Center, which I have not been over there since they put in the Atlantis exhibit, which for my money was well worth every cent. I could have just stood there and looked at that space shuttle all day. It was wonderful, very wonderfully presented. So if you ever get a chance to go out there, definitely recommend it. All right, so I'm going to see if I can get through this information. Some interesting information coming from the Dawn mission. Observations of Ceres have detected recent variation in its surface, revealing that the only dwarf planet in the inner solar system is a dynamic body that continues to evolve and change. NASA's Dawn mission has found recently exposed deposits that give us new information on the materials in the crust and how they are changing, according to 2 papers published March the 14th in Science Advances that document the new findings. Observations obtained by the Visible and Infrared Mapping Spectrometer, or VIR, on the Dawn spacecraft previously found water ice in a dozen sites on Ceres. The new study revealed the abundance of ice on the northern wall of Echolink crater, a crater 12 miles in diameter. The new observations conducted from April through October 2016 show an increase in the amount of ice on the crater wall. Andrea Raponi of the Institute of Astrophysics and Planetary Science in Rome said, "This is the first direct detection of change on the surface of Ceres." Earlier. Raponi led the new study, which found changes in the amount of ice exposed on the dwarf planet. The combination of Ceres moving closer to the sun in its orbit, along with seasonal change, triggers the release of water vapor from the subsurface, which then condenses on the cold crater wall. This causes an increase in the amount of exposed ice. The warming might also cause landslides on the crater walls that expose fresh ice patches. By combining chemical, geological, and geophysical observations, the Dawn mission is producing a comprehensive view of Ceres. Previous data had shown Ceres has a crust about 25 miles thick and rich in water, salts, and possibly organics. Second study, VIR observations, also reveal new information about the variability of Ceres' crust and suggest recent surface changes in the form of newly exposed material. Dawn previously found carbonates common on the planet's surface that formed within an ocean. Sodium carbonates, for example, dominate the bright regions in Echolink crater, and material of similar composition has been found at Oxo crater and Ahuna Mons. This study, led by Giacomo Corazzo of the Institute of Astrophysics and Planetary Science, identified 12 sites rich in sodium carbonates and examined in detail several areas of a few square miles that show where water is present as part of the carbonate structure. The study marks the first time hydrated carbonate has been found on the surface of Ceres or any other planetary body besides Earth, giving us new information about the dwarf planet's chemical evolution. Ice is not stable on the surface of Ceres over long time periods unless it is hidden in shadows, as in the case of Echolink. Similarly, hydrated carbonate would dehydrate, although over a longer time scale of a few million years. This implies that the sites rich in hydrated carbonates have been exposed due to recent activity on the surface, Corazzo said. The great diversity of material, ice and carbonates, exposed via impacts, landslides, and cryovolcanism suggests Ceres' crust is not uniform in composition. These heterogeneities were either produced during the freezing of Sirius's original ocean, which formed the crust, or later as a consequence of large impacts or cryovolcanic intrusions. Changes in the abundance of water ice on a short time scale, as well as the presence of hydrated sodium carbonates, are further evidence that Sirius is geologically and chemically active body, said Christina DeSanctis, VIR team leader at the Institute of Astrophysics and Planetary Science. Before I go to history, I did want to mention that the Mars Curiosity rover just hit a milestone recently. It's 2,000th Martian day or sol on the red planet, so pretty neat since it landed in August of 2012. On March the 19th, back in 2008, a gamma ray burst that occurred 7.5 billion light years away from Earth, halfway across the visible universe, was detected by NASA's SWIFT satellite. The explosion was so powerful that the afterglow was briefly visible to the naked eye, making it the most distant object ever seen by humans in recorded history. To put that in perspective, that means the explosion occurred before our solar system even formed. In 1962, Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev responded to President John F. Kennedy's March 7th letter suggesting teamwork in space exploration. Khrushchev was positive about the prospect of international cooperation, saying that in the future, international cooperation in the conquest of space will undoubtedly extend to ever newer fields of space exploration if we can now lay a firm foundation for it. Khrushchev's letter prompted talks between representatives from the Soviet Union and the United States and ultimately led to the first U.S.-USSR agreement on space cooperation. That agreement was signed just a few months later in June 1962. Second, 1997, comet Hale-Bopp made its closest approach to Earth. Hale-Bopp was discovered independently by Alan Hale and Thomas Bopp while it was just outside of Jupiter's orbit in 1995. At nearly 665 million miles away, this made Hale-Bopp the farthest comet discovered by amateurs at that point. Being unusually bright, Hale-Bopp probably wasn't that difficult to see. It appeared 1,000 times brighter than Comet Halley did at the same distance. Hale-Bopp won't return again until around the year 4,380. And I wanted to mention this one. Just 1 year ago yesterday, March the 30th, 2017, astronaut Peggy Whitson broke the women's cumulative time on spacewalk record during her 8th spacewalk. Later in the mission, she chalked up a further 2 spacewalks, giving her a grand total of 10 spacewalks. And in her 3-decade-long career, she has some other firsts. During Expedition 16 in 2007, made her the first woman commander of the International Space Station, and Expedition 51 made her the only woman to have been commander of the ISS twice. By April 24th, 2017, Peggy had gathered the most cumulative days in space for an American and for any woman, 534 days, 2 hours, and 48 minutes. By the time she landed, she had clocked a total of 665 days in space, the most for any American astronaut. I think I will end it there. This is K5KTX. Back to you, Billy.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, so lots going on, and also if you want to, we're going to skip satellite passages tonight, so you just don't have the time. So if you want to know more about satellite passages, you can go to www.heavens-above.com, and you can put in your lat and long and see, your GPS coordinates and see what flyovers are coming over. You can get a lot of ISS information. That's the International Space Station. And they also have live ground tracking of Tiangong-1 if you're interested on the reentry of the Heavenly Palace. So with that, I will see if we have any final check-ins. Tom, KE5ICX, if you will see if we have any final check-ins, and give me a final count for the net. I'd appreciate it.
Very good. I did have one Echolink. He's disappeared, but he did check in. Wanted to check in earlier, and I missed him. KF5THE, Brent. I'm not sure where he was located, but I do have him in the log. This is KE5ICX, alternate net control for tonight's Skynet. I'll take final check-ins now if you'd like to join. I'll take RF first and then Echolink. If you'd like to join us this evening, please come with your call sign name and where you're transmitting from. Normal state.
Hi, this is KD2LJC, Keith from Stanridge, New York.
I have KD2LJC, Keith in New York. Any other, and thank you for joining us, Keith. By the way, we do this every week on Saturday night, so it's a weekly thing, and you're welcome back. Any additional check-ins, RF, any mode, please come now.
I'm completely operational, and all my circuits are
Hotel Yankee Papa, Tom, Irving.
Hello, Movie Net.
Bravo, number 4, Mike, Foxtrot, India, WB4MFI, Ted, Dallas, low power.
Very good. We have two check-ins, WB4MFI, Ted over in Dallas, low power, K5HYP, Tom over in Irving. Any final check-ins, please come now. Checking all the other modes in that. I see 30 check-ins, 30 check-ins, Miss Billy. Back to you, KE5ICX.
Great, copy that. 30 check-ins. That's awesome. So tonight we had 30 hams participating on the air. So thank you to all who checked in this evening. We hope you'll join us here next week and every Saturday night at 9 p.m. to discuss astronomy, space, and space exploration. On this net, the sky is never the limit. We're always looking for a few net control stations for this and all the DARC nets. If you would like to try your hand at this, contact any of the net controls by sending an email to nets@W5FC.org. You can follow topics and discussion about this net and astronomy in general on Facebook and Twitter, as well as our audio and video streams, video archives, and other useful Internet resources by going to W5FC.org at the conclusion of this net. So until next Saturday night, this is KF5PDS, Billy, and I'll be closing the net at 22:31 local time and returning the repeater to normal amateur use. So 73, everybody, and enjoy the evening discovering the universe. And if you celebrate, have a happy Easter or happy Sunday.
would like to join us, we've got about 5 minutes. We'll reconvene in about 5 minutes. So the movie is The Day After from 1983. So even if you didn't see the film, that's okay. Check in. We'll be talking about post-apocalyptic fallout. Everybody loves that topic. It can't get much better than that. See you in 5. This is KE5ICX.
KE5ICX, this is KD2LJC, Keith from Center Ridge. Sorry I joined late. I missed the URL for more information. Can I get a repeat on that or send it via the Echolink text? Over. No, 73, thank you.
Every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Central Time, and we go to around 10:30, so it's about a 90-minute net. Nighted nets, we do nets all night long. We have tech net that starts at 7 o'clock. Actually, we have the traffic net that starts at 6:30. 7 o'clock, we have the tech net. We take a break at 8 to 9, and then come back at 9 o'clock. We do Skynet, which is Astronomy net, from 9 until 10:30, and then at around 10:30, well, after 10:30, we run for about an hour to an hour and a half, depending on whatever's going on, and we talk about a movie that we collectively watched through the week. So that's where we're coming up to now. The Day After is the movie that we're doing tonight from 1983, a made-for-TV movie over on, I think it was the ABC network, most popular. So we're going to get started with that in just a minute. You're welcome to participate, any and all. I hope I answered your question, Keith. This is KE5ICX.
Yes, you did. Thank you for the more information.
Very good. We'll be getting started here in just a minute or two. This is KE5ICX. this is KE5ICX. We're going to go ahead and get started here. Tonight's movie is The Day After from 1983. Yes, it's an old movie. Good news is it's over on YouTube, so a lot of folks probably have seen it. For those of you who did not, let me give you a little synopsis, and then I'll go ahead and do check-ins. So you're welcome, of course, to check in whether you saw the movie or not. This one's kind of one of those post-apocalyptic things or pre-apocalyptic things. But let me give you a little synopsis. Wikipedia comes through. It says Day After is an American television film that first aired on November 20th, 1983 on the ABC television network. More than 100 million people nearly 39 million households watched the program during its initial broadcast. With a 46 rating and a 62% share of the viewing audience during its initial broadcast, it was the seventh highest non-sports rated show up to that point. It set a record as the highest rated television film in history, a record that's still held as recently as 2009. It's a fictional war between NATO forces and the Warsaw Pact that rapidly escalates into a full-scale nuclear exchange between the United States and the Soviet Union. The action itself focuses on residents of Lawrence, Kansas and Kansas City, Missouri, as well as several family farms situated near the nuclear missile silos. The cast includes, and this is pretty good, Jo Beth Williams, Steve Guttenberg, John Cullum, Jason Robart, and John Lithgow. The film was written by Edward Hume, produced by Richard Papazan, and directed by who's become pretty famous director, Nicholas Meyer. It was released on DVD in May 18, 2004. Here's the story. I'll give you the plot, and that's it. The story follows several citizens and people they encounter in and around Kansas City, Missouri, and the college town of Lawrence, Kansas, 40 miles to its west. The film's narrative is structured as a before, during, and after scenario of a nuclear attack. First segment introduces the various characters and their stories. The second shows the nuclear disaster itself. The third details the effects of the fallout on the characters. During the first segment, as the characters are introduced, chronology of events leading up to the war is depicted entirely via television and radio news broadcasts, as well as communications among U.S. military personnel and hearsay, enhanced by characters' reactions and analysis of the events. Right before I start, I would like everyone to think about the plot and the story. If you remember, now we did have a problem with the repeater, one of those rare times when we canceled last week, so you may have seen this movie 2 weeks ago, in which case you're going to have to kind of remember what you saw. So, to think about it, if you don't have anything or you did not see the movie, perhaps you'd like to talk about some of the more than numerous apocalyptic films we've seen. This one was more factual in what might happen in a nuclear attack. Yeah, I know this isn't a fun topic, but I think it's kind of interesting in a lot of ways too, because how realistic was it when they're actually trying to depict something other than, Mad Max and every other film that kind of goes off the deep end. So this one's more factual. All right, let's see here. I think it's time for the Echolink people to check in first. They always get last round. So the Echolink folks, we're going to check you in first. If you're on Echolink and you'd like to join us this evening, even if you didn't see the movie, just let us know. Check in with your name, your call sign, and whether you saw the movie or not. Echolink only.
This is Kilo Foxtrot 5, Papa Delta Sierra, Billy and Sherman, and yes, I did see the movie.
This is KD2LJC. I did see the movie, but it's been a while. So unfortunately, my memory has passed upon it. But I'm eager to listen again. KD2LJC.
This is Kilo Bravo 5, Romeo Hotel Echo, Brian in Fort Worth. I didn't see it, and so I'm just going to check in for the count, and I'm going to listen. Back to net control.
Echo Bravo Bravo, David in Dallas. Yes, I saw the movie. Very good, and I'm going to go ahead and do these check-ins. So we have, over on Echolink, what we have is KF5PDS, Miss Billy over in Sherman. Yes, she saw the movie. KD2LJC, Keith, whose news is net, he did see the movie, but many years ago. That's okay, Keith. Generic responses, or even if you remember things as we go, you'll be surprised how people build up comments as other people bring in things to the net. KB5RHE, Brian over in Fort Worth. Now, we won't call on you. Appreciate that you did check in so we know you're out there. That is appreciated as well. You don't have to see every movie, and not always is everybody available at certain times to see stuff. So that's no shame. However, there will be a test. Let's see, W5EBB, David over in Dallas. Yes, you're checked in, and you did see the movie. I'll go ahead and continue with check-ins on RF. If you'd like to join us this evening, please come with your call sign name. Let us know if you saw the movie or not. And, don't forget your location, too.
This is 5 Bravo Bravo, Bill in Irving. I think I might have seen part of the movie in the past, but not recently. So I'm just going to listen only.
November 5, Hotel, Yankee Papa, Tom in Irving. Yes, saw the movie in '83 and saw the movie last week.
Charlie 5, Oscar Zulu Tango, Carolyn in Louisville, and I've seen the movie many times. H5OZT.
Oh, Foxtrot 5, Tango, Sierra Kilo, Burl in Dallas. I did see the movie.
Whiskey Bravo 5, Oscar Zulu Lima, Brendan DeSoto, and yes, I did see the movie.
Let me pause there and get these folks checked in, and we'll see if there's any additional. And Mr. Bill over in Irving, he did see it. It's been a while. That's okay. It's a memorable film. N5HYP, Tom, he did see the movie. Also in Irving, KC50ZT, Miss Carol in Louisville. She sounds like an authority. She's seen the movie more than once or twice or 3 times. It is a memorable film. KF5TSK, Burrow in Dallas, he did see the movie. WB50ZL, Miss Brendan DeSoto, she's a yay. She's seen the movie. Anyone else?
For Tango 5, Tango Mike, Tony in Dallas, and yes, I have seen the movie.
Tony, NT5TM, over in Dallas. He did see the movie. All right, very good. Well, let's start at the top. Now, you know, the folks that start at the beginning don't always have a lot of super information. Others do, but in any case, I personally believe that as you go further down the list, you actually get better insight. But that's just me. But we have one of the brainiest people we know up at the top of the list, Miss Billy, KFI PDS. What did you think of the plot to this movie? KFI PDS from KE5ICS.
Well, good evening, Tom, and everyone else on the net. Yeah, I also saw this in 1983 as a teenager and watched it this past, last week, or the week before last, I guess. I was preparing for last Saturday's net. So I watched it week before last. The plot, to me, is very well structured. I really like how they structured the before, during, after segments. I also liked that we followed the story through the eyes of different families in different walks of life and how it impacts them. We got to see the setup of the families before and then during the attack, and of course then the aftermath. So I thought it was very well structured. I thought it was very good that they left it ambiguous as to which side struck first. You weren't sure, did the Soviets strike first or did we strike first with the massive attack? So I thought that was very well played, because that way it didn't come down, on either side. It kind of left it, it was telling a story from our perspective, but in a kind of a neutral way, which I thought was a smart move on the part of the story writers. I thought the plot, definitely captured, it was very realistically executed, and caught also the flavors of what would happen, the panic and the building tension. You could definitely feel it throughout the film as it built up to the attack. Those feelings actually, it struck me very hard when I was a youngster. It made me very, very afraid, and watching it again, it kind of brought those feelings back. So the plot really is very highly impressionable, and I thought was very well done and very realistically carried out. So, and very well structured. So with that, I'll return it to the net. This is KF5 PDS, back to net.
Thank you, Miss Billy, and good comments all around. Let's see, next up, KD2LJC. Keith, I know it's been a while since you've seen it. You got any comments about the film itself, or post-apocalyptic or pre-apocalyptic? Go ahead, you're up. I'm sorry, you told me listen only. My fault. Wait a minute. Yeah, I'm sorry. I have already got you down as listen only, so go ahead and listen. So the next station I've got of individuals who wanted to talk about it, W5EBB, David, over in Dallas. You're up. What do you think about the film?
First of all, since there's going to be a quiz after it, please don't take too many points off for me checking in on Echolink instead of RF. But mistake noted. Okay, the plot. Well, the first 45 minutes were kind of boring, but then it completely made up for it in the rest of the movie. Entirely bleak, very realistic, painfully so. And you wish for just a minute of the normalcy of the first 45 minutes it would come back, but it doesn't. And that's kind of the power of the movie and why there was that setup of just kind of everyday life at the beginning. I also saw this in 1983. I was in high school at the time. This is the only time I've seen it since, and I recall why that was, because it is a difficult movie to watch, but it's a significant movie. W5EBB.
Very good, and I can't resist but to say, yeah, this movie was burned in my mind at the time I saw it too. I was much younger. Next station, who wishes to speak? N5HYP. Tom, what'd you think of the film?
This is N5HYP, Tom and Irving. Holly and I did watch the movie last week, and we both watched it. It was came on in the November sweeps of 1983, right after we got married. It had a lot of viewership because it had a lot of promotion, and it was a very interesting subject, basically talking about what would happen after a nuclear attack. At that time, of course, we still had the Cold War going on, as it was then. We have our new version of Cold Wars now, and slightly hotter wars, let's just put it that way. Yes, I agree the plot started a little slow. Again, they were trying to introduce a lot of characters at the beginning and intertwine that with the setup, which was the news reports of the growing tensions over in Europe. There were so many people that were involved with the setup that caused that, I guess you would call a rather slow start to the movie. We'll talk about effects later on. I do think that they did a good job in presenting a potential for how it could look and feel after such an attack. But even at the very end, at the beginning, they say that the images were basically probably not as stark as what reality would be. Also enjoy looking at 1980s hairdos, but that's also special effects. Back to next, this is N5HYP.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, there were disasters above and beyond just what happened, but hair and big glasses. KC50ZT, Miss Carolyn, your impressions of the plot on this film. Go ahead.
I saw it on the original broadcast, and as far as the plot, it is a beautiful mixture of focus on the whole picture, of the nation, the happened, the war. I also focus on all groups of people, like the hospital, and like the missile base, several. And then I'm focusing on individuals or families, in the case of the farm family, and how all of this affects it. And there's a nice balance between individuals, groups, and the wide view, you might say, KC50ZT.
And I'm sure we'll drill down on this in a little bit. KF5TSK, Burl, you saw the movie. What were your thoughts?
This is KF5TSK. Well, I really liked the whole plot of the movie. Some things seem to be a bit, I guess, out of sync. That it seemed like the cattle and the pigs died, but the horses all lived, and I was really surprised about that. And I was surprised that they really didn't have any, instruction on what to do, or you know, maybe cover up your mouth and not breathe in the dust or anything, and it's like, it was good, you know, it was probably what we expect, but, you know, there were things that probably were out of sync. That's all I'm going to say on plot. KFI-PSK back to net.
Very good. You made a very interesting comment, and I'm going to follow up on that in just a bit. Let's see, next, WB5OZL, Miss Brenda over in DeSoto. Your comments on plot.
W5OZL. I think the thing was brilliantly crafted. Pacing was good, dialogue was good, acting was wonderful, all these amazing stars. I do have a bit of a problem with the setup for how this war came about. That happened awfully fast, and that just doesn't go like that in the real world. It takes a while to invade a country. But Nicholas Meyer is truly a genius. And I thought the music added to it as well. I thought it was very appropriate. It was depressing. As a child, I lay in bed at night and worried about the bomb because that was the culture at the time. Did not see this movie in '83. This is the first time I'd ever seen it. I don't know why I didn't. 100 million people somehow got by me. If it came to my attention, I probably would have said, I got a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old in the house. I'm not going to watch that. And might have thought it was maybe we should watch the Care Bears movie instead. So, yeah, it's a depressing thing, but it's something people really ought to think about. Because it could happen. And, you know, we need to make sure that it doesn't happen. So, it's a serious, horrible subject, but I think one that we really need to ponder. Back to that, WB5OZL.
Miss Brenda, NT5TM, Tony, your comments on the plot.
My movie-going life, horror movies don't work on me mostly. Sometimes I get them, but when they get into gore, I either want to do first aid or I complain that the blood doesn't look realistic. On the other hand, it would be difficult to conceive of a movie whose plot is more carefully crafted to get me agitated and scared than The Day After. First saw this movie as a TV rerun. I don't know if it was on ABC or some UHF channel back when they had reruns instead of infomercials. I got chicken pox in high school. I missed almost 3 weeks of school. I think I went back to school on a Thursday at lunchtime. So I was lying in bed with a high fever, shaking. I could kind of crawl to the bathroom, but I couldn't keep food down. And I'm watching people dying of radiation sickness on television. I was dying, and oh boy, could I relate. So I think the plot is excellent. I think the plot is still timely and perfect. If anything, I agree with the closing disclaimer that it understates the likely effects. It's kind of funny because people at the time often felt that to look realistically at nuclear war was the alternative was Soviet occupation. The release of this movie led directly to the production of the horrible, horrible movie Red Dawn, which stars a 35-year-old Patrick Swayze as a high school senior. There were people who felt that if we weren't willing to steadfastly face horrible nuclear death, the alternative was just surrender. The good just as terrified of nuclear war as we were. And the plot of this show brought that terror home to ordinary people. That leaders who'd read the, damage studies and the after effects studies and the PSYOP, the single integrated operational plan, our leaders already knew this horror, and the plot of this show brought it to us. So I think the plot cannot be beat for scaring me. It makes me shake. I'm still agitated after watching it. I haven't seen this since high school, and it brought all my bad memories back. NT5TM.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to go ahead and pause. This is KE5ICX and Net Control for tonight's Afterglow movie. We are talking about, in case you're listening and you're wondering what this is all about, we're talking about the film The Day After from 1983. This is a film about a nuclear attack which hits the United States and Russia. It all takes place inside of Kansas in a small communities, more or less, through the whole thing and various groups. All right, I'm going to make my comments, and then I'll ask for additional check-ins, so you can go ahead and collect your thoughts if you've seen this film or would like to comment on it but have not checked in. I am absolutely surprised, but not surprised, the fact that so many people remember this film, maybe not vividly, but they remember the film, at least the details and everything about it. I think Tony makes an excellent point. This thing actually comes off as a horror story in so many ways, but more realistically than we could ever imagine. It's agitating, it's annoying, it is scary, it does all the things, it hits all the beats that you would expect from a movie of a much higher caliber, perhaps maybe in a theater, although I think this is one of those films they couldn't do in a theater because it's too depressing. I'm a big fan of Nicholas Meyer, who actually wrote this. He was probably best known as a breakout guy in a book, The 7% Solution, that he wrote, which was about kind of the reboot of Sherlock Holmes, and he's written a bestseller. He's also a great director. He's done a number of other films. So expecting and seeing what he did was not knowing who he was back then, but knowing who he is now, suggests that he really did a very good and admirable job in creating this terrible situation and making people believe it. It was interesting too. It was a little slow. I agree with everyone. It was a little slow in the sense that at the beginning you got to establish your characters, but that's pretty true in any disaster type film. And this followed that plot. But what happened was afterwards was that there really wasn't a winner, and there never is in a nuclear exchange like that, or even in war itself. There's not real winners. There's a lot of losers, which is one of the cautionary tales that they bring out. You got to be careful, and for a situation like that, it can be unleashed. There's a reason why we don't do it. There's a reason why there hasn't been a bomb dropped since Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which also brought up a point to me. I'd been to the World War II museum in New Orleans, and if you get a chance to go to New Orleans, you need to go there. I don't want to digress, but there is the part about the bombs being dropped, and it does bring to home the dangers and the horror that goes along with it, as well as the horror that came before it. So the film does an excellent job of bringing that out. I thought too, what was interesting was Burl brought up a really interesting point. He called it, what did he call it in my notes here? It was out of sync. There's a point where you see a horse with drawn wagon that shows up, yet all the other animals are dead. So unless they took the horse down into the silo somewhere together, I think that they would have died. The other thing, too, is that people shielded for some period of time. A lot of them are going to die. Most of them are going to die anyway with this closest the bomb attacked Kansas City. These other groups probably would not have survived. So I think that plays in on the kind of the technical and the plot part. And they do, as someone else said, they admit to the point that things probably would have been and should have been far worse, but it doesn't make for good drama on screen, even though the truth is it hurts very badly. I'll stop there. I'll see if there's additional check-ins, and then we'll go to the top of the list. I have additional check-ins this evening. If you'd like to talk about the movie, that's fine. If you do not, just let us know you're out there, and I will put a no, and you can just listen in. Any additional folks who would like to check in, please come with your call sign, name. Did you see the movie? We're going to follow our usual path, so most folks are aware of this. We're going to go ahead and talk about character development or the overall. Boy, I'm getting tired. I got up early. We at the museum all day, so I have a tendency to kind of stumble at times. We talk about the characters themselves, something that you liked, hated, or otherwise found inspiring, annoying, or otherwise interesting that you like to bring to the net as far as character development. Well, that's our next topic, character development. So I will go to the top, KFI PBS, Miss Billy. Sorry I didn't give you a huge heads up, but what did you think about characters?
Sorry about that. I think somebody was they kept keying in. No, it's okay. I know I'm at the top. So, characters, I thought they had a good mix of characters. They showed people in different walks of life, in different towns. You know, there was Kansas City, Missouri, and Lawrence, Kansas, which was just about, I think they said 40 miles from Kansas City. So, I think they showed a good mixture of urban and rural. Of course, you know, Jason Robards played the doctor, so you had a professional man, and he was in the front lines seeing, you know, the devastation, you know, physical devastation of the nuclear fallout. And then you had your farm family that lived next door to the missile silos, and I thought that was particularly scary because, you know, here the woman's out just, you know, day to day doing her laundry, and she lives next door to a military installation. I mean, I was scared as a kid, and I lived in a city that, you know, and I wasn't right next door to a military base, but when I saw that as a kid, my jaw dropped because I was like, oh my God, these people live right next door, and when the bombs left the silos, it was right, like, in their backyard, and to me that was so super scary. To think that people lived that close to a base and an installation that lived that close to silos, I just couldn't believe that. So, you know, you had your rural farm families. They included a military man. You know, McCoy was military. He was a soldier. From his perspective, so you got to see lots of different perspectives, you know, from the college student and then the professor, which was played by John Lithgow. And, you know, you got to see a lot of, you know, all the different aspects from civilian to military, and so I thought that was a good mixture. I also liked the way that the characters were developed throughout the story. You saw them before, and yeah, it was slow-moving deliberately because we wanted to see the tranquility of life, the normalcy of life, and we knew, and then of course after the bombs had dropped, you know, we were longing for those first 45 minutes, like, you know, please let life be normal again. Of course it never will be after that. You know, eventually it probably would return to some normal, but it would not be the way it was. And so I think they, the character development was good at showing that. Also, like B.B. Besh's character, she did not want to give up the normal life. She was still trying to plan her daughter's wedding, and she had to be physically dragged to the basement. She just did not want to believe that this was going to happen. And I thought that made it very realistic. And not everybody just went, oh, well, time to go to the bomb shelter. She was like, just screaming and kicking and, a lot of people were like that, just not, it was happening whether people wanted it to or not. And it took, it robbed you of your normal life. And I thought they did a great job of developing that through the characters' eyes, through the young people that were destined, that were going to be married, but then, of course, that was completely thwarted. It was devastating to everybody's life, but we got to see it play out in different ways. And then, of course, the after effects as well, affected people differently. So, and yeah, I agree with Tony that the statement at the end saying that this is, an understatement. It's going to be a lot worse than this, and showing it in a small rural town play out the way it did made you escalate it in your own mind, thinking, okay, I live in a city that might be, 5 or 10 times larger than that. And if it was that bad there, how bad is it going to be, say in Dallas or Houston or Los Angeles? It's going to be, that just makes it, you let your imagination play on that, and that is terrifying. So, and I agree with Tony that, yeah, it was terror that was generated in your mind, and I saw that as a teenager and saw that this past, week before last as a adult for the first time, and it is very timely, and as Brenda said, I totally agree with, we cannot let this story die. We have to keep remembering this because we do not want this to happen. And I thought that the way that the story was told and the cautionary aspects and just the way it played out with the individuals, the characters drew you in. They made you feel for them. You really felt bad for them. You wanted them to survive. So those are my feelings about the character development. I thought they were very well developed, and they had very well-known actors of the time, and they were very good actors. And so they were able to really bring the emotion and the pathos and really genuinely make you feel for them, which was an important part of this story. If you didn't feel for the characters, the story would not have hit as hard as it did, the nuclear devastation. And I thought, we'll talk about special effects, so I'll save my comments for that round. So with that, I'll return it to you. This is KF5PDS. Back to Matt.
Thanks very much. Excellent comments. I got a page of notes just from what you said. Folks over on Echolink, if you want to opt back in, don't forget, you can do so. Just type in the chat box. I'll get you in there. Let's see. Next up, W5EBB. David in Dallas, what did you think of character development?
It was realistic, I'd say. The characters ultimately, in the macro sense, were all minor characters because they were all reduced similarly to basically nothing. Just no dignity, no strength. But that's where the characters really showed what they were about and how they dealt with that. And so in a sense, this is a strong moral play in that the characters have to struggle with, do they cling to their humanity and their sense of right and wrong, or do they switch to a survival-only instinct, me first, and I'll take out anybody I have to just to survive. Those are questions that each of the characters in one way or another had to address. And, the way the movie ended was perfect. The movie ended was perfect in answering that question. W5EBD.
Thank you, David. That's very succinct and very descriptive. I like that a lot. N5HYP. Tom, your comments on character development.
This is N5HYP. Again, like I mentioned, they tried to cover a lot of different characters, and so you kind of only got sort of snippets of stories that kind of played into the action later on. However, it was enough to set up the different scenarios that you were going to encounter as you went along, whether it be the doctor and his daughter, the farm family, the college students and college professors, the military guy, and all that stuff. And yes, so it was all necessary. And yes, the first 45 minutes was kind of slow. It did build in tension, and that was good. And then, of course, seeing how the characters respond, thinking about the young girl from the farm family who just couldn't take it anymore and ran outside and got exposed to so much of the high radiation levels and eventually suffered from severe radiation sickness and had to be taken by her brother into the hospital, into the city to try to find a hospital that was open that could possibly treat her. That story was very poignant, I thought, and again, when I was growing up, we had a basement, and technically that basement was our fallout shelter, but I don't think we ever could have survived down there because just of how much fallout would probably get in through the air, but still, these people had to come up with a way to live it. So it was very thought-provoking. I thought at least the character development helped us to think about the situation and think about the overall plot and make it potentially real because we could see ourselves in some of the characters. Back to that from N5HYP.
D5ICX, I'm the net control for tonight's Afterglow Movie Net. We are talking about The Day After from 1983, made-for-TV movie from ABC. When I get to the bottom of the list, if there's anybody else who'd like to check in, we'll go ahead and quiz you on this movie if you're so inclined. Otherwise, we'll just take you as check-in. Next station, KC5OZT. Miss Carolyn, what did you think of the characterization?
I will say it was very touching, and different, different individuals and groups and stuff, but, one thing that stood out was, at the end, people were squatting on the farm, Okay, that group, they shoot the farmer. They were that kind of group mentality. But then yet at the end, there's another group of squatters, and they welcome the doctor. That there's it shows you how it affects people. You would assume these people have all lived with this red. I remember, I don't know if many people know, but there was a Nike base southeast of Denton, I think, have dismantled it now, but I remember once in the 60s, they roped off Main Street in Louisville. They were moving a missile to the base, and they had to come up 121, go up Main Street to the highway because it couldn't turn, and the whole town turned out to see that rocket. That was quite a sight, you know. And let me reset. And you were always listening for that radio signal. That sure stuck out. The bombs hit. You heard it, I think, in the car. But in a small town like Louisville, we had siren signals. 1 for drowning, 3 for fire, 6 for tornado, and if it just kept blowing and didn't stop, you'd know it was a atomic bomb coming. So when you heard that go off, you just held your breath, and it was so relieved when it would shut off, you know. And you would assume these characters were used to that kind of background that we don't seem to have as much today, you know. But I like the way a lot of the characters were developed. I can't even cover them all. KC50ZT.
Okay, thank you, Miss Carolyn. And yeah, I agree with you on a lot of those points. KF5TSK, Burrow, your thoughts on characterization?
That's KF5TSK. Well, I would say that I think there were too many characters because I was trying to figure out, what happened to the professor's son, where was his wife. It seemed like everyone was in a different place, and I was trying to follow it, but, I guess when they had, radiation burns, they weren't really the same person in this, so it's like, I was trying to follow the character all the way through. One thing I did like is they showed the shelter, and it was like, that was just, just poorly planned, and I guess it was everything you would expect. They were running out of food, or, the government only could deliver so much. It seemed like, ham radio worked, but, they didn't have any broadcast stations anywhere, or that anyone was listening to. That was my general comments on characterization. KF5TSK came back to that.
Thank you, Burl. Got some notes on you, too. Let's see. Next up is W5FC-DASH R. Miss Brenda, what did you think of characterization from KE5ICX?
This is W5FC-DASH R. Yeah, I wondered about ham radio operators, if they could get on the radio and see if there was anybody alive in Greenland or Venezuela or someplace in the world, if there would be some hope for the rest of the world. Although in some nuclear situations, it affects the whole world, and you have a nuclear winter, and it's just, the whole world dies. But I think in reality we would have seen some of that. The radio operators would have tried to reach out and try and find, if there were some people doing okay. The characterization I thought was excellent. In any kind of dire situation, you have some people rise way above their normal character and become saints and heroes, and then people weaken and become looters and complainers and whiners and drag down everybody else rather than helping. And I think that this thing really nailed that. There were people who were quite noble and some that just really were not at all. This thing benefited from excellent actors. They could, this is really an all-star cast, and I think that helped a lot. So, you wonder, why would you take somebody who is about to die and put them on a wagon and haul them off to the hospital? It's kind of an ordeal, and you wonder what they were thinking. I mean, these people all knew they were doomed. They were going to die very soon. And the idea of, well, let's just get to the hospital. The hospital can't do anything for radiation sickness like that. You kind of wonder what they were thinking, and it was a terrible risk to go off like that. I was just surprised nobody stole their horse. All I have to say for now. Back to net, W5FC.
Hey, thank you, Brenda. There's some good comments there as well. Let's see, NT5TM, Tony, your comments on characterization.
That is kind of my turn, and characterization is kind of Erin's turn, so I'm going to relay a couple of her comments. As someone mentioned earlier, she really loved the woman who was still trying to put sheets on the bed and had to be dragged down to the basement, because at first it seemed like this really crude sexist characterization, oh, she's just still worried about the wedding. She realized that it was deeper than that, because she was really just trying to cling to normalcy. This isn't happening, this can't be happening, the world is going to go on, and these things that I am doing will still be important. It was not sexism, it was hysteria, it was desperation, it was a serious piece of character development. Moment that some of the shots with this were some of the most haunting and affecting ones that stayed with me from when I saw this in the 90s. And Erin was able to tie them into Gone with the Wind. When the young man is, heading home to take the blind little boy home to die at home because he's never going to see again, and he's looking through the basketball court to find the young woman. And, I mean, she even thinks they've given her a ribbon for her hair, and of course it's a triage tag because she's going to die. She thinks she probably kind of knew that. And just the way they show that whole space full of the dying, it is absolutely evocative of the Civil War hospital scene in Gone with the Wind, with just the overwhelming presence of inevitable death. It really hits you. The person who said earlier, and I apologize, I did not get your call sign, that in a way we're all minor characters because it's the situation. I have to agree with that. By omitting characters like presidents, and we don't see the generals, the decision makers, the Soviet general secretary, the Chinese premier, it doesn't matter who fired first, because everyone in the world is, before this awesome situation, a minor character. We are completely overwhelmed by the force of the situation. And all the characters, although not terribly dynamic, we don't see anyone struggling to overcome inner demons. Characters are meant to be in every man or every woman. They're not as dynamic as they could be, but they are all meant to be relatable, so that we can each find someone to relate to in this every town. Lawrence, where I've been several times. I think I've only been to Lawrence once, but I've been near there several times. Right in the middle of the country, and somewhere in this movie. One degree of Kevin Bacon moment. I have one of Aaron's aunts, someone I've actually met, was an extra in this movie because she lived in Lawrence when they were filming, and they needed lots of locals for these big mass casualty scenes. So you can't see her, but there's even a character in this movie somewhere that I know. So no, we didn't get complicated characters, but we got relatable ones. We got wonderful moments of character development with the big mass casualty scenes, and with the woman who was trying to change the sheets on the bed and had to be dragged to the bomb shelter. We got characters who we could all see ourselves in, which I think is part of what makes this movie so gripping and so horrifying. NT5 TM.
Thank you very much, Tony. Those are excellent comments. And let's see. Let me tell you, we'll talk about the technical parts coming up next. And I'll take additional check-ins in a minute for The Day After from 1983. Made-for-TV movie from ABC Productions, produced on ABC Studios, I believe. Okay, I think it was David, W5EVB, talked about characters being not mattering, that they happened, correct me if I'm wrong, there was nothing they could do. And I think that's who you're channeling on this one. I agree. I think this film is frustrating on so many levels because when a bomb hits, first off, we really don't know much. We do see the president. We know that there's the Russian premiere, and there's things going on in the background. We see kind of like generic news footage that you would expect, and we've been scared before by these things. We continue to be scared by these things even today because they rear their ugly heads almost routinely. And part of it is that the characters have a tendency to kind of go poo-poo it, and then later on they become more alarmed, and then eventually, before you know it, this whole thing hits, and it begins this whole axiomatic, weird, off in another direction thing that ends up with the characters being hopeless and despairing, which is different from most of the stories because you usually have characters that come out and they always win or prevail in some way. Nobody won or prevailed in this, and that was the whole point. Nobody wins in a nuclear battle. Everybody loses. I think that's probably one of the most important parts of the film, kind of running to the end, is that it is hopeless. There's not a lot you can do. Now, I do remember that because of this hopeless kind of ending and the characters are all going to die, those that may live, if they do, are going to have a vastly diminished life. I do remember ABC News did a program afterwards where they talked about it. In order to kind of quell the despair the audience had when this thing came out. And I do remember I was pretty much a kid myself, and watching this thing and trying to, make sense of it. Never been approached or had this kind of feeling before with all the characters. The only thing that might possibly, match up with this would be cancer. A family member gets cancer, or you, heaven forbid, get cancer, and then you're suddenly realize that your own mortality, except it's multiplied by all the characters in this film, multiplied by even more characters in the great Atlantis scene, as Tony was mentioning, of sorts, with more and more people. The camera pulls back, and you get, this is a much bigger thing, but the people become smaller and smaller. I'm trying to you remember, and was it Lennon? Lennon said death is just a statistic. The death of one is, I'm probably doing this quote incorrectly because I'm tired, but I remember the quote, and that is, the death of one is a tragedy, the death of many is a statistic. So that's kind of how that plays out in the story itself. So it is a depressing film, and the characters are reduced, and as such, we feel and understand their despair. All right, I'm going to go to the top of the list. This will be the last round on a specific topic, and then we'll go back. I'll go ahead and ask if there's any additional check-ins at this point. Anyone who would like to check in, please come now. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and go to the top of the list. This time we'll do, and we're doing it basically in the same order we've done for the last couple of months now, and that is the technical part of it. How did the film play out? Was it realistic as far as the technical aspects of the film? So I will start at the top of the list. KF5 PDS, Miss Billy, what did you think about the film technically? Did it reach your expectations? Did it fail? What things drove you nuts? What parts of the film did you feel were well done? From the physical I'll stop now. You know what I mean. How did the film play out for you?
Well, it played out very realistically for me. It was interesting to see the behind-the-scenes military aspect, to see the protocol. Now, I'm not a veteran. I was never in the military, but so to a civilian, and seeing that, so anybody that was in the military, especially if they were, privy to seeing this kind of protocol, I thought it looked like very exact protocol. It played up to my expectations, and I can't remember at what time War Games came out, if that came out before or after this, but they showed this, similar authentication procedures with the nuclear protocol at the beginning of the movie War Games, and so, the military protocol aspect was very authentic. I liked the kind of documentary aspect of handheld camera when they were, with the military personnel. It gave it a more realistic feel, like you were there in the room with them as they were running through their protocol of, authentications and key turnings and everything. Seeing the nuclear blast scared me to death. I had never seen that, as a teenager, I'd never seen anything on TV that showed a blast except for maybe black and white. And to see it in, of course, in history class, we saw stock footage, which they used brilliantly. They intermixed the action with the actors and the stock footage of the nuclear blast footage, because, there's no other way to show the awesome power, I guess. They could have tried. Well, I'm glad they didn't, because any special effects, I think, would have fallen short of the actual footage. So I thought it was smart the way they intermixed that, because you could look at that, and I remember, like my mom and grandmother saying, that's real footage, that's really what would happen. But to see the blast in color, like to see that mushroom cloud go up and in color, it just looked thoroughly evil. And that is what burned in my mind and made me scared. I was scared to go to bed that night. And I remember hardly eating dinner that night because it's all I could think about. And so it left a very deep impression on my memory. And so to see it again as an adult, it brought all that back. It was very realistic. The electromagnetic pulse, with the airburst, I thought that was, very realistically done. And then I guess with the science aspect, with the Geiger counters, and I just I'm not sure about, the immediate effects is like, what kind of radiation exposure they were all exposed to, but, or how immediate, the radiation effects would be. I've not studied that, but, so I don't know if it would really manifest, would it really, I'm asking, would it really manifest itself that quickly? I guess if it was really high exposure, it would. So I don't know personally if, I just wonder, was that realistically portrayed? That I don't know. But the fact that, it brought to my mind that, there's invisible things in the air that we could not see, that could harm us and kill us, that could be deadly, that even though we don't see it, like she ran out into the field and didn't realize she was going to, just in that short period of time, get a lethal dose of radiation, So I thought the technical aspects were very well done, and it left a very lasting impression on my mind. So I can't think of anything else, but I looked up that quote, Tom, and it says here that the quote is, the death of one man is a tragedy, the death of millions is a statistic, and it said that's what Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin allegedly once said to U.S. Ambassador Averell Harriman. And there's some variations on the wording on some of it. It says when one dies, it's a tragedy. When a million die, it is a statistic. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. But I can't think of anything else to say with regards to the technical. So this is KF5PDS, back to net.
And thank you. It was Stalin. I just could not remember who it was. And yeah, it's almost urban legend of sorts how that quote went, but it applies in so many ways from a totalitarian dictator, which is who we're facing down during All right, let me go to, let's see, next up, W5EDV. David, your thoughts on characterization?
Characterization or special effects?
Oh, I'm sorry. I am losing my mind. I've been up since 5 o'clock, so I'm starting to fade. I'm sorry. Special effects, David. Go ahead.
Well, they were good. To me, some of the stock footage was kind of threw me off every once in a while because it kind of jumped and you could see the resolution change and recognize it as stock footage. So it broke the flow in some scenes. But I guess the way people annihilate it, kind of with the X-ray and kind of the animation, it was kind of cheesy, but it was probably, you don't want to be too graphic, but you just want to show how instantaneous and just immediate it is. And that was it was sort of like it was probably the best way they could have done that. So it just was done in a visceral way, so that it felt like it was actually happening. W5EDV.
Thank you, David. I'm sorry I misled you. By the way, we'll have an open round after this, and then we'll close it down. So we'll get through, we're about midway through our check-ins here. So N5HYP, Tom, additional comments from you on the technical aspects of the film, as well as the clan that watched it with you. What are their comments? N5HYP from KE5ICX. I suspected, people are starting to drop. So let me go down the list. KC50ZT, Miss Carolyn, your comments on the technical aspects of the film.
Here's N5HYP. I was on the wrong frequency. I'm back.
Okay, well, very good. I'll send it back to you. Go ahead. Your comments on the technical aspects of the film.
So I spun the transmit frequency off. Didn't realize it. I thought it was pretty good for the budget that they had. 1983. Not a lot of really high-end special effects. Everything was optical or physical. I thought they did a decent job of trying to give you a sense of what it might be like, i.e. all the dust on the ground. Of course, that dust was radiation laden and caused animals and life that was left outside to end up dying of radiation sickness. I did actually like, it kind of more was a plot thing, but when the farmers had the meeting with the government officials and the government officials were telling them what they should do with their soil in order to be able to start planting crops without fear of radiation contamination, and they were like, well, what are we supposed to do with the dirt that you want us to rake off the land? Where do we put it? The government people didn't have an idea to it. That wasn't plot. That wasn't special effects. That's just reality. It's kind of the way governments tend to be. They have a lot of determinations of how to do things, but when it comes to being real practical, well, that's another story. Anyway, I thought it did a decent job of giving you a feel for what it would be like after such an attack, such an event, and so thus it served the plot admirably. This is N5HYP.
We're talking about the government and here we're going to do these practical things, calm down, and then it goes, and people go even more practical and say that's not possible. I like that. KC50ZT, Miss Carolyn, your comments about technical aspects of the film. Go ahead.
If you don't mind, I'll also talk about the technical effect from the music point of view. Of course, it opens with grand music, like Burma Foundation, and another one, the next tune, although a lot of people don't know it's tune, Resignation. And a lot of the movie, in fact, most of it, no music at all. And that really, you might say, sets a bleak background for it. He could easily have written in nice, sorrowful, minor music or something, but he didn't, or else they cut it, I don't know. But the absence of the music there adds to the effect. And let me reset. And then when they from Virgil Thompson's music for a movie, The River, or not a movie, it was a documentary, which I took a look at, and it's something you ought to take a look at sometimes, but there's sort of a background between what he chose. He was into the Sacred Harps, singing Virgil Thompson, so he took this music from the Sacred Heart section. And most people know that as How Firm a Foundation now. But it's Sacred Heart Singing Convention, every one I was ever at. That's always the last song sang. And the lyrics for there, first verse, farewell, my dear brethren, the time is at hand that we must be parted from this social band. It's, the whole, I won't read all 6 verses, don't worry, but it's about the, everybody leaving, and you could say, there's individuals leaving, dying. The country, you don't know, may be leaving. The whole way of life is leaving. And it seems like he might have chosen that with that in mind. That might say sort of hidden meaning to that song. But something to think about anyway. KC50ZT.
Thank you, Miss Carolyn, and I always love it when you bring in the musical aspects of films and the mix of it as well as the emotional, because you've got that musical background thing, as does Billy. So between the two of you, you guys have an incredible understanding of that, way above and beyond anything I got. So I really appreciate your comments. Let's see. Next up is Cat5TSK, Burl. Your thoughts about the technical aspects of the film, whether they be the physical making of the film or maybe something a little deeper than that. Go ahead. Cat5TSK from KE5ICX.
This Cat5TSK. Well, one of the things that bothered me about the movie, it seemed like they did some bad camera angles, and I don't know if they were, did it on purpose, but it was almost like they were showing the sun come up, in the middle of two people, and it was like you really didn't, see their face or, what their emotions were. And sometimes in the movie it seemed like it was poor lighting. Of course, some of that might have been hard to do. One of the things, I downloaded the movie because I wanted to get the whole thing to look at and not be interrupted by ISP problems. And I realized that I was looking at it on high definition TV, but the movie itself was, I think, 480 by 480. Which would have fit a TV of that time, and I'm looking at it on a wide-angle TV. As far as the music really came across very crisp and clear, and the things that did have music I thought was very good. But I think the absence of the music was just to, portray it being a bleak moment. K5TSK back to that.
Very good. I do have comments about the music. I'll explain in just a minute. Miss Brenda, I'm talking to her on a back channel here. She is going to bed. She got up early. She worked the museum event, so she's pooped. So we're going to skip her and let her get a good night's sleep. NT5TM, Tony, your comments on the technical aspects of the film.
Thank you, Tom. When I first saw it,
but I was a little disappointed to see the skeletons that we kind of see in a flash as people are vaporized. I had rather have seen kind of shadows on walls like we got on the actual strikes in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But when watching it as an adult, it's a little cheesy, but it's startling and effective. So on the whole, I have to say the technical stuff works and supports the movie, NT5TM.
Hey, thank you, Tony. Yeah, I think that was a little bit of showbiz from the 1980s. I agree with you. I had forgotten about the skeleton thing, but I think that got to remember too, and this is true with anytime we do some of this the TV stuff. We don't do it very often. Most of the time it's on a big, huge screen, or it's on our screens at home, and you don't need to be over the top. When you get into movies and television, made-for-TV movies and regular television programs, you see everybody really up close and personal because they're on a very small screen. So you have to deliver your visuals in a very dramatic, over-the-top way to fit on a 12-inch screen or a 14-inch screen or something that just doesn't really translate. And Burlman mentioned, too, about the poor lighting and everything, too. Well, part of that, too, is the crappy picture that we're watching it on and the 4x3 frame and the low resolution that actually did exist in 1983. So that all applies. So, yeah, I agree. Now, my comments on this thing. First and foremost, Carolyn mentioned the music. It is Spartan in that it doesn't show up except mainly at the very beginning. There's a little bit in between, and there's effective use of music, and then there's the effective use of not any music. And in many cases, that works to its own greatness in a film. One of the things, and I'll be kind of digressive on this, is that in the Alfred Hitchcock film, The Birds, there's no music at all. Bet you didn't even know that. When you watch the film, there is no music. And that's kind of surprising because I'm a huge fan of music in movies. Saying that, David Rackson, who I can't even pronounce right now, this was his last movie that he did for the music. He is no lightweight in the world of motion pictures. He is best known for the music to the popular Laura, that haunting score. Everybody talks about it as one of the best scores ever made for a motion picture, at least the theme. So if you think about that, he did the music for this. He was part of a bunch of folks through the years. Sometimes some of them not as well known in the sense of iconic scores, although Laura is probably his best. He's known for Apache, 1954, is one of his films. The Secret Life of Walter Mitty is another. The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes in 1939, Hound of the Baskervilles in 1939. He was the arranger for music for Modern Times. Yes. So you can take a lesson from the guy. He's exceptionally good. He was getting up in years. He died in 2004 at 92, so you can imagine that he was just on his way out of doing movies. So maybe it was minimalistic in that sense, but the score, definitely David Ratskin stuff. So if you want to learn more about him, of course you can go find out. Go to Wiki or any of those other places. You'll get a lot of good info. All right, as far as the rest of the film, technically, I love the beginning. Somebody mentioned War Games. It's on the list. I already got it in the lineup. And yeah, that whole opening sequence is almost identical to what we see in War Games. I thought that was kind of cool and fun. I think War Games came first. I got to go back and look and see. But so it was probably inspired by that. Let me reset. Overall, yeah, it does take you out of the scene when you see the standard above ground attacks, not attacks, but above ground testing out in the desert. Yeah, we've seen that 1 million times in that stupid palm tree. We've seen 3 million times. But even still, I think the movie rings true because of the honesty in which it tries to tell its story. And I think that's what really makes it work. Sometimes movies have a small budget, and we know we've seen a bunch of them. But sometimes they can deliver a powerful message if it's done in an honest and somewhat disarming way. This film does that. That's why we continue to remember it so well, is because it could happen. It might happen still. And it's done in such a way that we're not going to, sand down the rough edges. We're going to leave them there. And that when it leaves in that, who knows what happens next? Well, we all know what happens next, and it's not good. So I think overall, I think the film really delivered in an exceptional way, and it's still as powerful today as it was in 1983 for many reasons, both practical and dramatically done, thematically done. All right, I'm going to open it up. We are going a little long. It's 12:04. But I'll go ahead and ask if there are any additional comments. Anything, any order, just come with your call sign and we'll go down the list. This will be last call. Go ahead.
Echo Bravo Bravo.
AF5 PDS with a comment.
LJC. Just wanted to say thank you for letting me listen on the net. 73 to everyone here on the net. Yeah. It's actually, as I said, I forgot more about the movie than I remembered, but listening to you guys talk about it, it was definitely brought back some interesting things about it. And if you look at it even today with the most recent Korea threat, it's so scary, the fact that there are nuclear weapons out there that somebody who's not thinking can throw in the air and really do damage to everybody around us. It's not just damaging the other side, it's damaging everybody. But once again, this is KD2 LJC. Keith from New York, 73 at everybody, and thank you again for the opportunity to listen in.
Very good. And Keith, thank you for your comments. And don't forget, we're here next week, 10 o'clock. You're welcome. What time? 10:30. You're welcome to check in. And we also have a Facebook page. If you're on Facebook, go to Afterglow Movie. That's 2 words, Afterglow, followed by movie, and we'll get you checked in, get you signed up, and then you can see what the movie is each week, amongst other things. Let me go to W5EBB David in Dallas. Your final comments.
All right, so I'll make a few comments that will probably bump me up on a list that most people would prefer not to be on, but I'm not bound by any covenant not to mention it. The distress, the emotion, the feeling, not of the movie characters, but of the people watching it. The nightmares, keeping you up at night, all of that anxiety from the movie, which was highly publicized and had a lot of discussion before and after, obviously. I'll use the keyword propaganda. March 1983 was when President Reagan, for the nation, proposed SDI, the Defensive Industry, Star Wars. In the first minute of it, even mentioned it as a new hope. And that's what was lacking, hope. And yet, for a few tens of billions of dollars over the next 10 years, we'll have a system that will give you hope in your moment of despair. We'll save you. The government will save you. That was suspiciously timed the same years as war games was as for the movie in general, help us. That was somebody didn't might have built cash, gold, or silver, limitations, and I have to decision with the decision maker in a build-up structure. No. There's one thing that will help, and that's to have a friend, no matter what happens. And the last scene demonstrative of that, if they were voice conference test from Blade Runner, if you had no emotion watching that final scene, then to a replicant, you don't have an outcome plan.
We had a little trouble hearing you. It was a little bit choppy, but I got it. And having a friend in the end of it. And I hope you'll come back again next week. Your comments were very, very interesting, and I enjoyed them a lot. So please come back next week, and we'll continue this, and everybody else as well. KC50ZT, Miss Carolyn, you had additional comments. Go ahead.
It was something I don't remember when I heard it. It was years after the movie, but it seems like I heard somewhere that, of course, American politicians were watching, but the Russian politician, you know, from the embassy and everything were watching too, and it's sort of I don't remember what news story it sort of hinted that maybe that might have been the beginning. You know, it impressed them so much that they began to really start the peace talks, you know, that led to the, well, not the end of the Cold War, but at least the easing of tensions. And this, I can't remember when I read it, or if it was on TV, but it sort of hinted both sides, you might say, watching that movie was sort of responsible for that. Something to think about. KC50ZT.
You know what? Media is an interesting thing. You get a lot of things that influence and otherwise, and populace too, as far as what influences what. Art imitates life, imitates art type of thing. And you have that constantly evolving. And you and David both brought up very good comments about the fact that at the time what was going on. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. But at times it continues to be something you got to look back upon. You know, I volunteer at a museum, Air Museum, and the history is everything. And World War II is a big deal when they talk about it. It was huge sacrifices with people, ordinary people thrown into extraordinary circumstances. And as such, we too can be called to duty because of that. I think this is the type of thing that plays out and plays back to our existence and our livelihood. And I think this is really it slams home with this film. So I picked it out. I actually found it kind of on the sidelines there, and I looked at it, and I watched the first few minutes of it, thinking about whether we should add it to the list. And I went, holy cow, this is probably a very good film to do. And once again, this one I think has beat the record as far as something to talk about. So I'm going to stop now. I'll go ahead and say what our next movie is for next week. Maybe I shouldn't do another downer like this, but in the end, I think it's quite good. Our next film next week, which is available online, I'll put the links up, but you can find them as well, is 1984, which came out in 1984. So check it out. This one should be an interesting film. Any final comments, and I'm going to shut it down. Please come out.
W5EBB.
Hi, David from KE5ICX. W5EBB, David, go ahead.
Of a Stranger. If you haven't seen that. W5EBB. Clear.
Let me make sure I got it right. It's called Hands, Hands of a Stranger. Is that right, David?
That's correct. W5EBB.
Excellent. I've got it here on the list. I'll check it out and see if we can find a copy of it online. Anyone else have any suggestions for movies that you would like to bring? I haven't done that recently, and I need to do that. Additional film suggestions. Go ahead. W5FC.
Tango Mike.
Go ahead, Tony.
Hey, my adrenaline's been going all night. This has been a very exciting choice and a great net. Aaron would like to mention Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and perhaps if we want to branch out into horror, and I don't know if we do, maybe we have to save it for Halloween, but if we're willing, Bram Stoker's Dracula, MC5TM.
All right, I got it written down. I have no problems with that. That's a classic anyway, and it is science fiction of sorts. Maybe it's horror, but in any case, I've got it on the list. So I'm going to say thank you to one and all. This is a great discussion. I wasn't entirely sure this movie could really garner the kind of discussion that we had, but obviously it did. So thanks to one and all. Appreciate it very much. I have these films. I will put it in the list. If you don't know, we have a Facebook page. It's called Afterglow Movie. That's 2 words, Afterglow, and then movie. And if you want to sign up, you can do that. I include the links. Otherwise, if you want to, send me an email to KE5ICX, Kilo Echo 5, India Charlie X-Ray @yahoo.com. If you want to be put on the email list, I have an email list that we send out as well in case folks don't like Facebook, which is becoming fashionable right now for obvious reasons. So if you want to just be on the email list, I will send you the links there as well. So I'm going to say 7-3 to everybody. If you've not considered it, come on down to the Frontiers of Flight Museum tomorrow. You get to see the World War II vintage aircraft. We've got down there 2 bombers, the B-24 that's flying and the B-17. Maybe you've seen them in the skies. And then a PT-51C, which is the venerable and very reactive, the quick Mustang fighter that's there. So come on down. We'll get you in for free. Just come on to the back of the museum, park, and say you're with the Dallas Amateur Radio Club. We'll get you in. I think you have a lot of fun. It's definitely worth your time and effort if you're interested in that sort of thing, as most of us are. So this is 7-3 to everybody. I'm going to bed because I got to get up early. Yeah, I'm going to do my best. Thank you all. It was a really great net, one of the best. 7-3. Good night. KE5ICX clear.